So anyway, the spaces between, that's the name of the show tonight. It's going to be quick, but we're talking about Luke chapter 15. It's an interesting chapter because what happens there is you open up and it says the publicans, which are tax collectors, and the sinners were crowding in on Jesus, and the Pharisees and the scribes said, "Look at him. He entertains publicans and sinners." And automatically, it says, and Jesus told them a parable. The first parable he says is, what man, having 100 sheep, who loses one, would not leave the 99 and go out and seek for the one until he's found it? And when he's found it, would he not put it on his shoulders and come into town and say, "Rejoice with me, for this sheep was lost and now it is found"? That's what he says. He's talking to this audience of people. There's Pharisees and scribes. There's people all around him. But Luke does not include anything in between. It's dead silence. It's the space between. Is it possible that he gave this parable of an animate object that can be lost because it, of its own accord, went out into the wilderness and put itself in jeopardy? And they listened to that, and they were farmers, and they were ranchers, and they were sheep herders, and they were like, all right. Immediately, Luke goes into another parable of Jesus, and Jesus says, or what woman? So in the first one, he says, what man having 100 sheep? He says, what woman having 10 pieces of silver, who loses one, would not light a candle and sweep until she has found that piece of silver, and when she finds it, wouldn't call her friends and neighbors and say, "Rejoice with me, for I had lost this piece of silver, and now I've found it"? Again, silence. There's no response in Luke. He doesn't say, and the publicans did this, and the sinners did that, and the Pharisees snubbed their noses or murmured. It's just silence. Could it be that Jesus now delivered them another angle to try to help them understand why he sits with sinners and why he eats with publicans? And that it was just going over their head. He used a man with 100 sheep. He used a woman with 10 pieces of silver. Nothing struck. Silence. So he automatically then, it seems like, says, okay, let me tell them something perhaps that will strike a chord. And he enters into the parable of the prodigal son. Now, most of us can relate to that in one way or another. We've had brothers or sisters who are prodigal, or we have children who are prodigal, or we have parents who have gone off. We all know someone that we care about who's gone the other way. And this seems like Jesus said, okay, I'm going to give you one. That's why I sit with publicans and sinners, because the lost should be sought after until they're found, like a sheep that's wandered into the wilderness. Silence. Okay, let me give you a woman who loses a piece of money and she searches it until she finds it. Silence. Okay, let me give you this one. There's this man and he has 2 sons. And the younger son comes to him and says, "Give me my inheritance." And so the father gives him his inheritance, and he goes to a faraway country, and he spends it on riotous living, is how it's put. The translation of that is loose living. And he says, and so he goes off and he spends it with riotous living. And he has nothing left, and right when he loses all of his money, a famine hits. And the son winds up meeting up with a person of that country, and the person hires him to feed the swine. For a Jew, the most deplorable of jobs. And he's so poor that he's eating the pods, not the husks, the pods that the pigs ate. And it says, and when he came to himself, meaning when he woke up and realized, my father's servants eat better than I do with the bread that they're given from him, I'll go back to him and I'll say, Father, I have sinned greatly. He rehearses the speech in his head. I have sinned greatly against you and against heaven. Let me come and be your servant. So he makes this speech, and he leaves that far country broke and full of pig slop, and he walks back to where his father is. And it says that when his father saw him, he ran to him. In the parable that he told about the woman, and in the parable that he told about the shepherd, he said, the heavens rejoice when one person repents over a person who doesn't need repentance. With the woman, he says, and the angels rejoice when a person repents over a person who needs no repentance. There's a whole story in this, but all of it was answering the question or the comment, why does this Messiah sit with sinners? Maybe you're a sinner. Maybe you're a saint. Either way, you can learn from it. If you're a sinner, Jesus would sit with you because he believes you are of much value as one sheep being lost and the rest being left until he can find you. If you're a piece of silver that's lost, you are that one piece of silver, and Jesus thought you are valuable enough to go out and search and search and search until he can find you. If you're a Christian, if you're a quote-unquote saint, you'll know the value of befriending people who have been lost, who have gone on their separate way, whether it's the brother, the younger brother, whether it's the piece of silver, whether it's the animate sheep, whatever it is, lost things have value. And believers ought to spend a lot of their time and energy associating with the lost as a means to help bring them back. So tonight's message is for any side of the coin, if you want to put it that way. Jesus teaches so beautifully that the lost have profound value, insomuch that the very heavens rejoice when they're found. Out!